everyone, I'm Trisha Morris and I'm coming to you from my office at the Club Scrap warehouse based in Neenah, Wisconsin. Welcome. I am so excited about this little mini book event. I've always loved making handmade books and this is what we're going to make. It's so super cute. The album opens up and holds a ton of pictures, so much real estate here, and it's only 3.5 by 5 inches. Now during my presentation, I don't have a lot of time with you, so you may want to just sit back, relax, take in all the information, and then work at your own pace to make this book for yourself. I've got a special landing page where you'll be able to access all the information and instructions required for this project. So if you want to make a note of that, it's clubscrap.com/mini. Just go to clubscrap.com/mini and there you'll be able to find everything you need. I'll share that link with you again later, but just keep that in mind and just relax for now and take it all in. Let's get started. I think it's so fun to see the regular 5x7 original size of this album that I actually have a project instructions that transform one Club Scrap kit into this beautiful book. I use almost everything inside the kit, and so you can do this with any kit that you have. This was the Beautiful Noise kit, and here's the Gone Wild remix. Just look at these beautiful pages, fully embellished and ready for pictures and memories. Now the miniature version takes about half of a kit. So this is made with Club Scrap's October Geodes collection, and this is the one we're going to make together today. It only requires 7 sheets of 12 by 12 paper, and you'll be able to construct this entire book. If you want to construct the exact book you see here, you'll need the Club Scrap Geodes page kit. And if you don't really care for these colors or styles, we have other little books that we've made out of other collections. So it really works across the board. This was with our Pacific Northwest kit and has pictures in it. What I love is how the book expands to accommodate the pictures and still lays nice and flat. And then this one was done with our really sweet Western collection. So there's just no limit to this adorable mini project. You will need a nice sturdy trimmer. I use this Fiskars style bypass trimmer. It works great for the project. And then I've printed the instructions again from the landing page, clubscrap.com/mini. You'll be able to download and print these for yourself. Now, as far as the papers specifically that I'm using, I want to go over those very quickly. In the instructions, it tells you that you need paper A, B, C, D, and E, and so on. So I just want to mention what I'm using, which is going to be 2 teal. Plain will be my paper A. And most of Club Scrap papers are 80-pound cover weight, so it's a nice heavier weight. Then I'm also using this blue plain. It's kind of a sky blue. And then for the next sheet, I'm going to be using purple, and then black, and then 2 prints from the Geodes kit. Then to decorate my book, I'm also using the cut aparts from the page kit. And this provides all the artwork that I need to really make the book look finished and outstanding. I actually used every single cut apart to decorate my book except that one. So I really went crazy on decorating, but it shows. It looks so, so beautiful. All right, so we are going to get started right away. And as you may have come to know from us at Club Scrap, grain direction matters. And by cooperating with the grain of the paper, later when we do some folding, we'll make nice crisp folds rather than crumply, ugly folds. So when we put this first piece of paper into our trimmer, we want to make sure the paper dips easily from top to bottom like it is right now. Now if I rotate it a turn, do you see how stiff the paper is? I can barely wiggle it, but here it just droops right down. That's what I want with this piece. And I'm going to go ahead and take the second piece as well of teal and do the same exact thing. Make sure it dips easily top to bottom. We'll remind you of that in our instructions. There will be an arrow that indicates which direction the paper should dip when you put it in the trimmer. Now, with most Club Scrap projects and with most bookbinding projects, measuring is essential. So we're going to cut this paper at 11 and then slide the paper down to 8 and then 5. Then rotate the paper so it's horizontal, and we'll cut at 10 1/4 and 7. Now this right here will end up being a page for 2 pages in our book. There will be 2 rectangles that you created. We need to trim these just a little bit at 4 3/4. I have this little pocket organizer up here. I'm just going to use the organizer to track some of those little pieces. This is officially a scrap, but I ended up using most of my scraps when I was decorating my book. Now you've got this long strip. You got two of them that are 3 by 12. One of them I'll trim horizontally at 9 and 4.5. This is going to make some panels for my book, and I believe they're just slightly smaller than the previous 2 rectangles we trimmed. And we have some scraps, but I'll just put those in my file anyway. Now there's another pair of 3 by 12s. This one we're only going to cut at 9. This long piece, I'm going to set it aside to be scored, and it grows up to become the spine of my book. I always like to know where I'm headed, so that's what that's for. And now we have another set of squares that we can use as options to decorate our book. Finally, this last piece, we're going to cut horizontally at 10 and 5. I'm going to put these like in my pocket as well. They're 1 by 5 strips, and I want to show you what those become. If you look in the book, this piece right here ends up holding the whole book together. So those 1 by 5 strips are really important. Okay, we're going to do all of that one more time with the sky blue plane. So we'll place it into the trimmer and cut at 11, 8, and 5. Notice I stabilize on this clear bar every time I cut. Rotate and we'll trim at 10 1/4 and 7. You've just made another page for your book, and then this will cut horizontally at 4 3/4. I realize I'm working quickly here, but knowing that you can go back and watch this again, this is just kind of like a good healthy little preview. You'll be okay. Now I'm going to cut one of these 3 by 12s at 9 and 4.5. Now we've made some more panels, and then this can go in a pocket for decorating later on. This one we just cut at 9 to make another piece of the spine, and file this for later. Let's make some more of those spine holders. We'll cut this one piece horizontally at 10 and 5. 2 more binding strips used for our book. That is the end of the trimming instructions for step 1. Now we're going to move on to step 2, and for this paper selection I've chosen purple, and I'll check my grain direction to make sure it dips easily top to bottom. And we'll make several more cuts here. The first one's at 11, and then 8 and 5. Rotate this piece so it's horizontal, trim at 11, 10, and 7. You just made another page for your book. And then take this smaller rectangle, we'll trim horizontally at 4.5. Put that in my little organizer here, and we also made 2 of those cute little binding strips. Now the next 2 sheets in the pile should both be 3 by 12, the same size. We'll trim them horizontally at 9 and 4.5. More panels. Some are large, some are small, and more squares. This last piece, we kind of do a repeat to get our final binding strips. So 10 and 5. Okay, binding strips, we'll sort those together. Now, so far, this I would consider to be my unusable pile of scraps. We only have 3 more pieces to trim. I'm going to do a black plane and just check grain direction. This time, the arrow points left to right, so I'll place it in like that. And I'm going to take 1 additional print and check the same thing for dipping left to right. The trims in step 3 are a little bit different. We'll start out at 11 3/4 and 7. Now trim horizontally, that's 7 by 12, at 10 and 5. You just made 4 pages for your book. And then these are scraps that can be used later. In fact, if you just want to save a little time, I think I ended up trimming most of these to 5 inches to match the height of the book. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, then you have this other larger piece. We're going to cut this into panels. So we'll start at 9 3/4, 6 1/2, and 3 1/4. These are going to be nice big panels for your book. I think they're the larger size, and then this too can be used later for decorating. One more time with this last print, check your grain direction, dipping left to right. We'll repeat what we just did. So that's 11 3/4 and 7. Rotate, cut at 10 and 5. Look, 2 more pages for your book. This guy, I think I will go ahead and just trim this to 5 inches because it's not in the instructions, but I know that's kind of how I ended up using it. Save you a little time later. And then this last strip, this is 4 3/4 by 12 right now. We'll cut it 9 3/4, 6 1/2, 3 1/4. Remember, you can slow me down on the repeat. I know I'm going quickly, but I just want to get to the making of your book so you know how all of this comes together. And I've got all those fun pieces trimmed and organized. I'm going to swap my trimmer for a score pal. There are 3 3x9 pieces that need to be scored to form the spine of our book, and I have very specific instructions for you that will help you be successful later on. You can find the numbers at the end of step 1 in your instructions. Let's begin by scoring at 1 1/8. You're not going to like these measurements. And then 3 3/8, 5 5/8. 7 7/8. Now you do a flip, okay? So just bring the bottom to the top. Now we'll score in easier numbers. 2 1/4. You can go to sleep now. 4 1/2. Oops. 4 1/2. 6 3/4. And that's it. Now if you look, you can see we have these score lines perfectly and evenly spaced between each other, and every other one is a bump or a divot. And that's exactly what we want. You'll repeat that for the remaining 2 spine pieces that are 3x9. Now the other thing that you have that could be scored are your inside pages, but I'm going to show you a little trick that even saves that step. I'm all about efficient crafting. I'm going to take this piece of paper and put it in the score pal so the plain side is facing up, and I'm going to use the score pal kind of as a jig to help align the edges of those pages. So when I'm in a classroom situation, I notice a lot of times students have a hard time aligning those corners on the fold. And even if we score the paper, sometimes that still is difficult to do. If you use the score pal as a folding jig and then just skip the step of scoring, I think you'll actually have prettier folds. Okay, now that I have all of that folding done, I can stack up my finger pressed folds and just simply burnish with my bone folder. I know a lot of you are making Christmas cards right now in high volume, and this is a great time-saving tip. Also, to protect your paper while burnishing those folds, you can cover it with a scrap paper just to make sure the paper doesn't get scarred. Now I have my inside pages ready. I skipped one. Okay, now the spine pieces. This is really fun because we've done most of the hard work already. I want you to find the bump in the middle of the piece that has, the score that has the bump, and bury it inside a fold when you fold the paper in half. So the rule of a score line is to bury the bump, and then we're going to alternate the folds to accordion or fan fold. So here's a bump, I'm going to fold back, fold forward, and here's another bump, and all the bumps got buried inside these folds, and look how easily this comes together. Then I'll burnish all of the folds at the same time. I kind of just like to start in the middle to make sure I have a good solid foundation for my spine piece, and then you can just simply accordion fold. You see how fast that goes once you get the hang of it. Be mindful that I have made a ton of these little books, and if this is your first one, just take your time. But of course, we don't have a lot of it together, so we'll just move it along, and you can watch this as many times as you like. Next, we're gonna set up our spine, and I'll take the 2 matching colors and lay them on my work surface so they have a space in the middle, and that the first fold here is like a free edge, and then it goes down into a valley and up to a mountain. Repeat that for the other side. Then the middle section, you'll want to place it so that the first fold faces down, and that will slide onto each side of the accordions. This, my friends, is the entire spine. We'll need to adhere these together, so that's easy. I'm going to use Club Scraps bookbinding glue in a handy needle-tipped applicator. So I'll just add the glue to this piece and slide this in. The reason I like a wet glue for this process is that it allows me some flexibility Now I have one continual spine piece that's ready to go for my book, and for now I can set that aside to dry. Next, I'm going to prepare the inside pages for my book, and you'll need a cutting mat, a grid ruler, and a craft knife to make that happen quite easily. And I'm going to place the page on my cutting mat, and I like to actually use this handy grid on my cutting mat to make sure the fold is aligned with an area on the grid. Then I can also take my grid ruler, it's all about the grid here, and make sure that that is also aligned. And I need to cut a slit into the fold of this page that's 1 inch from the top edge and 1 inch from the bottom edge, maybe just a tiny little bit past. So if you look at that now, I have this slit in my page, an inch of paper here and an inch of paper there that's still fully intact. So again, just spread this paper onto a cutting mat if it has a grid on it, and then I need to make sure you go starting at an inch from the top and ending an inch from the bottom with a craft knife. Of course, you want to repeat this step for all the remaining pages. Okay, that is all of the pages completed with that 3-inch slit, leaving the top and bottom intact. Next, you might want to put the pages in the order in which you want them to be seen. So you can that's all a matter of personal preference. And just take a few moments to figure out how you want the inside pages of your book to look. Now the fun and exciting part. I'm going to take this spine piece that I prepared and place it in front of me so that the very first edge is a free edge, and then it goes down into a valley and then a mountain. So this mountain pleat is the pleat that I'm studying right now. I'm going to just shove that together so it looks like this. Then take the first page of your book. I've chosen to be just this black plain, and I'm going to slide the pleat onto the slit that I cut earlier. And remember how I said you want that slit to be just a little larger than 3 inches? That's to accommodate the 3-inch pleat that's coming through the slit. Now close that and find the next pleat and simply thread the next page onto the pleat until all of the pages have been attached. The number of pleats you have will match the number of pages you prepared. Once you have installed all of the pages, you can kind of just tap it, and that will just put everything to rights with the way this book is going to come together. Remember earlier we cut all of those little strips, and one of the things that I do to the strips, and this is totally optional, is if you happen to have a corner chomper of some kind, on the larger books I made a 1/2 inch punch at the corners, and on the smaller ones I'm only using the 1/4 inch setting. So again, you can see the 1/4 inch setting on the side of this punch. I believe this is by We Are Memory Keepers, and I'm sure some of our awesome vendors that participate in these shows carry this awesome little punch, but I'm doing 4 at a time here, and then I'll do the last 2. Then open the book, and you get to choose the color that you're going to be using. So I'm going to try to create contrast here and take this 1x5 strip and slide it into the spine. Now, if you remember earlier, when we did the scoring, we had those really weird measurements like 1 1/8 and so on. We were scoring 1 1/8 inch sections so that we could easily slide the 1/8 or the 1 inch strips into the pleats. So I'm just kind of going through and making sure every single pleat has a binding strip installed. My book is virtually finished, the construction of it. I'll take my same handy little bookbinding glue and just tack down the flap of the spine on each side of the book. And now it's time to gild this lily. So remember all of those wonderful pieces that we had prepared earlier, all of those rectangles that you were bored probably of cutting during the trimming process. Plus we had all those fun scraps that we saved. So I'm going to organize those by size. We had a series of rectangular shaped panels and another series of rectangular shaped panels. And if you'll notice, they are designed to nest with each other to create even more interest. Now, on the outside of my front cover, I went through all of the printed pieces and chose my favorite, maybe this one on my front cover. And then this can go on the front cover without a nesting panel just to let that beauty shine, right? It's just so gorgeous. I can't even believe it. And then you'll choose a second one for the back cover. From there, you can decorate this any way you wish. Now, the other decorating point I want to make is that these binding strips are loose inside this book at this time. And that's where those 3x3 squares come in really handy. So I could take, for example, one of these squares, and what I really like as a decorating option would be to maybe round the two outside corners, and then you can attach it here. So it becomes almost like a flag page in the book, and it matches the beautiful look of the binding strip, and it holds the binding strip in place. Now let's take one more look at the finished book. Again, using the cut aparts to decorate everything, all I had to do was adapt them, like trim the text from the larger piece, or trim the 12-inch strip down to 5 inches. As a tip for finishing albums with photos, sometimes you don't really know anymore what size this was. So I'll take my 8x8 grid ruler and hover it over the mat. And here I can see immediately it's 3 1/4 by 4 3/4 in size. And then I can take this to a picture and hover over the picture to make sure if I crop it to 3 by 4 1/2, I'm not going to lose any critical parts, if you know what I'm saying. So don't forget, this was made with the 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐧𝐥𝐢 collection, which was the current kit, is the current kit at Club Scrap for September. And then here, this one was made with Pacific Northwest, this one was made with Western, and we have any number of gorgeous kits for you to choose from. Plus, if you were to join Club Scrap, your first kit would ship on October 1st, and it will be the beautiful theme called Golden Hour. Again, I'm Trisha at Club Scrap. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget that landing page where you can access all of the important information, including instructions, is clubscrap.com/mini. Hope to see you there.